Now to pick up where we left off. The Lost Boys reveled around blazing bonfires. Peter Pan missed Tink and rose through swirling sparks to her tiny house. Pan's shadow danced in the moonlight while Tink talked about old times. Tink had always loved Pan and had even drunk poison to save his life. Now the fairy feared she would lose Pan again because she was too small, so she made the only wish she had ever wanted for herself. The fairy grew and grew until she was as large as her love. Tink's tiny house perched on her head like a hat, her glow bright as day. Pan's shadow fled in alarm. Pan was speechless as Tink murmured, "I'm going to give you a kiss." Peter Pan put out his hand, expecting a thimble. But Tink really kissed him. The kiss reminded him of Moira and his children, and his eyes drifted to the pirate ship in the harbor. "What are you looking at?" Tink asked, knowing the answer. "Go save your kids, you silly man." Dawn's rays gleamed on musket and sword as Hook beamed with pride aboard the Jolly Roger and harangued the assembled crew. "Spit my infinitives. 'Tis my hour of triumph. Today's war won and Pan's bones charred to dust. I shall leave this shattered world and take my rightful place in history." The concertina fell silent at the sound of ripping canvas. "Captain, it's a ghost. The ship's haunted. We're doomed," Smee cried. He stared at a shadow spotlighted by the sun. "What's that?" Jack asked. Pan parted a slashed sail and slid down a sunbeam, shouting, "Peter Pan the Avenger!" Smee cowered behind his fearless captain while Hook gloated. "Do my eyes deceive me? Peter Pan! Has it been 3 days? Time flies and so do you. Good form. How did you manage to fit in those smashing tights again?" "I often wonder that myself." Anyway, the pirates laughed with evil glee. Blushing, Pan glanced down at his legs. "Hand over my children now, Codfish, and you and your men go free," he said firmly. Hook was never more sinister than when he was polite. He graciously suggested that Pan ask Jack what he wanted. "Take my hand, Jack. We're going home," Peter Pan said. "I am home," the miniature pirate replied, and Hook put a fatherly arm around the boy's shoulder. "Good for him. You see, he is my loving son, and I am prepared to fight for him," Hook exclaimed and drew his sword. "Peter Pan, prepare to meet thy doom." "Dark and sinister man, have at thee," cried Peter Pan. Tickles pumped a happy tune, and the Skunks rushed to the fray, led by Noodler and Jukes. Peter Pan faced the scurvy screw with his sword and dagger flashing. The morning air rang with clashing steel and fearsome shouts. "Don't you love being a pirate, Jack?" Hook yelled, as Peter Pan bravely battled a score of greasy sea dogs. Deep inside Jack, among the old hopes and old hurts, a glimmer of recognition stirred. He asked, "Don't I know him?" "You've never seen him before in your life," Hook lied. Pan flew straight up to the yardam and crowed in the rigging. "I found my happy thought, Jack. It was you." The captain's hook chopped at a thick rope. "Dad, look out!" Jack called, but too late. The rope ripped free and a heavy net fell, dragging Peter Pan down to the dirty deck. Pan cried, "Bang-a-rang!" and the Lost Boys echoed, "Bang-a-rang!" With Rufy on the lead, they swung and catapulted, raining like howling hail onto the Jolly Roger. Hook cried to Smee, "Call out the village militia!" Even as Smee hurried to sound the alarm, Lost Boys swarmed the ship's rigging and the battle was joined. Like this one.
Enemy force sighted on the horizon.
Even as Smee hurried to sound the alarm, Lost Boys swarmed the ship's rigging and the battle was joined. Rufio fought his way over toward Peter, and back to back the two friends fiended off the pirates. Screams and war cries cut the air, thick with clashing swords and crashing clubs. "Jack, watch this," Pan cried. We'll show you who's chicken. Ace aimed a fast-firing egg shooter, coating the pirates in gloppy goo. The Lost Boys blasted with blowguns and slingshots, tomato catapults, and marble guns. Pan and his band guffawed as pirates slipped and slid and flipped and fell on the sloppy deck. Hook despaired while cowardly Smee hid below. Thudbutt crouched on the slippery planks and curled into a ball. The rumbling thud ball rolled like a bowling ball.
We've destroyed an enemy cruiser.
Toppling pirates left and right and left. But when he stood, Thudbutt was captured. "Help!" he shrieked. Jack grabbed a rope and swooped to the rescue. He freed the grateful Thudbutt, but himself was seized by Noodler. Just then the village militia arrived to reinforce the desperate pirates. In the confusion, Rufio saw a chance to make his move against Captain Hook. Meanwhile, in the gloomy prison, Maggie and the slave boys plotted their escape. One boy threw a rope made of torn tapestries out the window, but just then the jailer came into the room. "Get away from that window, there's a war on!" The jailer charged Maggie, who cried, "Jack, help!" Outside, Rufio and Hook crossed swords, but Pan intervened. "Hook's mine," he said. Then he heard Maggie and hurried to help. Maggie was bewildered when Peter Pan landed in the jail. "Daddy? My daddy is Peter Pan?" she gasped as Pan and the jailer exchanged blows. Pan tipped a statue atop the jailer, and the pin wrench pleaded, "Get it off of me!" "I'll never lose you again," Peter promised his daughter. "Stamp me, mailman," Maggie smiled, and in front of the stunned Lost Boys, Peter kissed her forehead. Guard her while I get Jack," Pan commanded and flew off. Latchboy gaped at Maggie. "Are you a girl?" Jack had never seen anything like the battle raging on the decks of the Jolly Roger. He watched as Hook and Rufio circled each other with whistling steel in agile steps. With a flurry of blows, Hook drove Rufio backward, but his blade struck the reclining bow. Now Rufio took the offensive and Hook minced away, but the sly captain's skillful claw slipped the sword from Rufio's grip. The Lost Boy dived to the deck to seize his weapon. As the wicked captain approached, Rufio jeered, "Looky, looky, I got Hooky." "Sadly, you have no future as a poet," Hook said. His eyes gleamed red as he ran his cold blade through Rufio. Just as the boy fell, Peter Pan swooped down to cradle Rufio's head. "You know what I wish?" Rufio whispered. "I wish I had a dad like you." Those were the last words on his last breath. "Bad form. He's only a boy like me," Jack murmured. "Dad, take me home." "You are home," Captain Hook asserted. But Jack flung his pirate hat at the wicked man's face. Peter Pan swept Jack in the arms and flew to the wharf. "Peter Pan, I shall always be your worst nightmare come true. Come back and fight me now, or I'll be back. You can't escape me." But there was no answer to Hook's hoarse shout, only the sounds of scattered fighting as his crew was overwhelmed by the Lost Boys. Big, strong, and ruthless, the pirates would have whipped the prankish boys if they had fought together. But the sea dogs struck wildly, every skug for himself. Many abandoned ship with the Lost Boys at their cowardly heels. Hook heard the distant din of battle in the town. He knew all was lost, but Hook would never surrender, so he pursued his enemy. Brilliant blades ringing, Hook and Pan dueled down the gangplank into Pirate Square. Ripplingly good comeback, Hook cheered. 3 days, diet, exercise, a miracle must have restored a fat old Pan. If you'd been in Pirate Square, you would have seen the most amazing sight. Peter Pan swooped and soared, circling the slashing sword of Captain Hook. The two foes fought in the streets and in the shops, upstairs and down, over chairs and under laundry, hacking and cutting as they'd never tire. Bad form. Play fair, Hook complained. Stop hovering. I can't reach you up there. And you with only one hand, Pan teased. But nevertheless he alighted to fight on dancing feet. The captain bowed courteously. Thank you. With a tremendous move, Hook forced Peter's face close to a spinning grandstone outside the pirate mill. The captain sneered. Alas, this is all a dream. When you wake, you won't be Peter Pan, but old Peter Banning, a cold, selfish man who is obsessed with success and hides from his family. Jack pushed through the crowd toward his discouraged father. You are the Pan, he said with faith and love. Pockets echoed the phrase, and the Lost Boys took up the chant. Peter Pan believed in himself again, and in the blink of an eye, Hook was disarmed. Pan gallantly returned Hook's sword. Curse you for your eternal good form, the captain cried, and the fight began anew. Who and what art thou, Pan? I am youth, I am joy. I will fight you, James Hook. Suddenly, Pirate Square was filled with Lost Boys carrying clocks. The wretched captain faced the steadily marching hands of hundreds of tick-tick-ticking timepieces everywhere he turned. Hook recoiled from the hated sound, curling like a burned match. Yet the captain was prepared to fight to the last, even though his enemy nimbly sidestepped every thrust and jab. Peter Pan taunted, Tick-tock, tick-tock, Hook's afraid of the old dead croc. I think not. I think James Hook is afraid of time ticking away. Twisting his wrist, Pan disarmed Hook. The old captain fell to his knees, breathless and exhausted. Good form, Peter. I am fallen. Pan pressed the point of his blade at Hook's throat. You killed Rufio. You kidnapped my children. You deserve to die. Hook lifted his chin smugly in a rogue pose. Strike true, Peter Pan. The square was silent. Would Pan kill Captain Hook? Maggie tugged Pan's trembling arm. Let's go home, please, Daddy. He's just a mixed-up, sad old man who needs a mommy. Yeah, Jack agreed. Let's go. He can't hurt us. Tears welled in Hook's forget-me-not eyes. Bless you, child, the captain quavered. Good form, Jack. Pan reluctantly sheathed his sword. Take your ship and never come back to Neverland again. Hook groveled as the crowd cheered, and Peter led his children away. Suddenly a slender knife sprang into Hook's hand. The treacherous fiend had more than lace up his sleeve. Fools, James Hook is Neverland. Peter, look out, Two Small shouted. But before Pan could draw his sword, Hook had pinned him against the scaly belly of the stuffed crocodile. You broke your promise, Pan protested. I've waited long to shake your hand with this, Hook snarled, raising his cruel claw. From evermore when children read of you, it will say, Thus perished Peter Pan. Unseen by anyone, Tinker Bell was nearby. She watched the captain threaten Peter with his hook, and just as the shining point slashed, a flash of light struck like a tiny lightning bolt. Brave Tinker Bell deflected the captain's blow, and his hook plunged into the croc's belly. Hook's struggle to free his claw toppled the tower. As the crowd fled, Pan pulled Jack and Maggie to safety. The crashing clock swallowed Hook in its great grinning jaws. As the dust settled in the square, the Lost Boys and Peter all looked up upon the fallen croc in wonderment. Too Small crept close and pecked within the yellow fangs. Hook's gone! Bangarang! Peter crowed. Bangarang! The Lost Boys cheered and apering a victory parade around Pirate Square. Hooray for Pan the Man! Peter applauded himself, and he saw Jack, Maggie, and Tink waiting for him. He could not stay and play. He had done what he had come to do. Time to go home. Hey, Nick. Enjoying the story I was reading? Tink sprinkled the children with fairy dust. One happy thought is all you need.
Get ahead.
Mommy, Maggie beamed and floated upward. My dad is Peter Pan, Jack said, joyfully rising.
Torpedoes to port.
But before he left, Pan chose a new leader for the Lost Boys. I'll never forget you this time, he promised. You're all my boys. Then he entrusted the Pan sword to Thudbutt. Take care of everyone smaller than you, Peter said. Thudbutt raised the sword. Peter Pan forever! From a dinghy laden with treasure and a pretty mermaid, Mr. Smee saw the family Pan fly higher and higher until they were lost among the fluffy clouds. Smee sighed. Poor Captain. He hates happy endings. The first rays of dawn chased the shadows of Neverland from the nursery of number 14 Kensington. Night lights burned above Moira, who slept in a rocking chair. A Neverland breeze blew open the window, and Jack landed on the balcony, with Maggie riding piggyback. Who is that lady? Jack asked. Maggie rubbed sleep from her eyes. It's Mother. And when she said it, Jack remembered. She looks like an angel, Maggie said. Let's not wake her yet. So the two tired children climbed into their warm beds to hide under the covers. Moira stirred and saw the open window. She rose and locked it tight. When she saw the lumps in the beds, she did not believe her eyes because she had seen them so often in her dreams. Gran Wendy joined her in the nursery. Gran gasped as Jack popped up. Mom was all he could say before he began to cry. Maggie popped into her mother's arms with a happy squeak. Mommy, oh my babies. Moira wrapped her arms around her children, smothering Jack and Maggie with kisses and tears. Jack said, Here are all these pirates. Daddy saved us, Maggie interrupted. We flew. And the little girl gave Gran Wendy a big squudge. Gran cooed, Pirates? You flew? How lovely. Peter woke to the sound of a groundskeeper sweeping up empty bottles. He sat up in Kensington Gardens. Tink stood on the bronze shoulder of a statue of Pan. You know that place between sleep and dreaming? That's where I'll always love you, Peter Pan. And that's where I'll wait for you to come back. You were saying, Dad? Sure. If you'll excuse me, I'll be right back. Sorry I had to wait that long. I was having lunch with Dad. Let's resume. Let's get to the end of the story without any interruptions. And then the rising sun blinded him. When Peter looked again, Tinker Bell was gone with his memory of Neverland. But he was changed. Peter danced and sang and laughed his way back to number 14, not caring what anyone thought. He vaulted the terrace wall and did a triple flip into the garden. He heard a muffled ringing and dug up the phone Nana had buried. Brad, hi, I'm seen in the snow. How am I? I'm greater than good, and much greater than great. Peter climbed the drain pipe to the nursery window, pounding on the glass, until the window swung wide. What have I told you about this window? Peter demanded of Jack. Keep it open. Don't ever close it. Peter hugged his son and flew him around the room. Then it was Maggie's turn, then Moira's, until they were giddy with laughter. Peter took the pouch of marbles from around his neck and poured happy thoughts into old Toodles' gnarled hands. Look, I didn't lose my marbles after all, Toodles said. He wandered to the window, lost in memories. Wendy took Peter's hand. Hello, boy. Hello, Wendy. Boy, why are you crying? Wendy asked, as she had long ago. I don't know. It's just a tear for every happy thought. Toodles sprinkled fairy dust on himself from the pouch and began to rise. Peter and his family were amazed. They couldn't believe their eyes. Thank you. Goodbye, Toodles said. He turned and flew out the window. Seize the day, he called back to them. Wendy looked at Peter. So your adventures are over, she said. Oh no. To live will be an awfully big adventure.
The ship is on fire!
Fighter airborne. Problem solved, sir.
Fire.
Fighter destroyed. Destroyed an enemy cruiser.
As I would sometimes say, if it hadn't been for a convenient fire that had been set accidentally on purpose, there would be no story to tell. You think I should read some other stories while I play? Well, that's all for now for me.